Deurma has a charde. Today is 3 months since my very dear Latin teacher died, and it is also 3 days until the beginning of the International Congress for Celtic Studies. So since I'm given to numbers and nostalgia, you wouldn't see me at all if only for nostalgia. I've decided to do a quite an interesting and perhaps controversial in some ways video. I had planned on continuing my ramble about linguistic relativity and moral objectivity and the etymology of words, and just reflecting on the etymology in memory of my Latin teacher. But I didn't have time to add any more to that, the notes that I had. And one thing that struck me actually is that my Latin teacher was convinced or thought a lot about that everything is connected, everything somehow is united. A theory of everything of sorts. So in some way then the video that I'm about to talk about, today is quite apt in that it is an almost united spelling system for the modern Celtic languages. Now, there is loads to talk about, and I'm going to be trying to translate from Irish, so I'm going to try and get through this as much as I can, because I only have about an hour and then I have to run. Now, right, off we go. I should say as well that I am absolutely by no means whatsoever an expert in any way on certainly not the British languages. Let's call them British. So please don't at all hesitate to correct me in a polite and educated manner. I'm quite happy to receive new information and to push back, because that's how we learn. Anyway, off we go. So we can skip all that. Sorry, now this is going to be very rough. Okay, I'll read it. Sorry. I'm sorry for who I am. So my aim with this paper, let's call it, is to look, is it possible that the spelling systems of the current Celtic languages are flawless? Are they flawless? Presumably not. And if they're not, in what way could they be improved? Now, again, as I say, I'm not an expert on the phonology of especially the British languages at all, more so only a beginner. We'll come back to that. So, no spelling system is a faultless spelling system, and my own spelling system that I'm proposing here is no different. Here is only the first step, as far as I know, towards an assimilation, or at least, an assimilation of sorts of the spelling systems of the living Celtic languages, though living, of course, is a metaphor. They're not actually living, they're just used. And I will be depending on other people to draw my attention to the ways in which my recommendations, I suppose, interfere with certain linguistic features, or will become clear later. Again, I'm only beginning this work, and I don't at all stand strongly on what I will say. I could easily change my mind, and because of that, I quite welcome recommendations and complaints. So what, another thing that's worth mentioning is that one shouldn't imagine that the rules of this spelling system aren't learnable just because I haven't learned them yet myself. So in this paper I will be referring to the way in which it is possible. I will not be referring to how one might implement this system. That's quite a mundane issue, an important issue, but mundane, and I won't be talking about it here. Since there's probably going to be very little difference in the way that my spelling system would be recommended, and any other spelling system that has ever been implemented would be implemented. Sorry. Now, so what I'll probably do is I might break this video in half, because the first half of this video, and I don't know how long it will be, will just be me talking about, I suppose, concepts relating to spelling without actually going into any details, and then the fun part will actually be looking at the details. So let's see how we go. So what the following recommendations are, in some ways, is a de-simplification of spelling. Because a spelling system can often become more complicated or more difficult when it is simplified. Think about that. Seamus O'Marachu discussed what simplification is in the article on Caidiana Figul Chesh the official standard of Irish spelling after 20 years, in which he says the following. So just some concepts about spelling first. So as regards simplicity in herself, because simplicity is feminine in Irish, grammatically speaking, it is possible to distinguish at least three kinds three different kinds of aspect. Those are recognizability, regularity or logic, and economy. To show these 3 points, he uses the following spelling. So he says that for rein, with this fleshkeen, this hyphen between them, is more recognizable. Its parts are more recognizable, and subdivision as such is more recognizable than that when it's all stuck together. That is, it is easier for the listener, especially the reader, especially the reader who does not have experience of the word, to recognize that word. As regards regularity, then, he says, Igod, this particular spelling, is more regular than this, since it is with O rather than O with nasalization, or U, so O rather than that the word is pronounced. And then as regards economy, he says that, of course, CHO, ho, is shorter and more economical than CHOMH, in that it is shorter by 2 letters. As is clear, he says, these things can interfere with each other sometimes. So this FOROINN without the hyphen is more economical than FO hyphen or OINN. They are to be weighed against each other, and priority to be given, according to Seamus O'Marachu, to recognizability and to regularity, rather than to economy. I would tend to agree. Very much so. According to my own understanding, then, something being simple and being easy, or non-arduous, are not the same. Or is not the same as what is soonest learnt. So according to me, what simple means is one like the number one, or what number one refers to, the concept of the number one. In that meaning, associated or near the amount to which the word one refers to. We confuse ourselves when we hide the truth on ourselves, or we hide the truth on ourselves when we use the word simple metaphorically or inaccurately as a term that does not refer to an amount. Maar Niels nehulucht in reality, ni is a thing in Irish, and race in Latin is a thing. So reality is, according to my own understanding, the totality of all things. Nielsen Yeholcht, reality is just quantification or quantity, time and place. And to describe reality or the world, there is a need for words or mental models, that is ideas, that refer to amount, place and time. Sorry, these are kind of undeveloped thoughts, but they might be interesting to think about anyway. So the communist opinion, the common opinion at the moment is that the Celtic languages, so this is a different point, that the Celtic languages should be divided into insular Celtic and continental Celtic, rather than Q Celtic, the Goidelic languages and Celtiberian, and P Celtic, the British languages, Gaulish and the Lepontic. So in this talk, I accept the ordinary opinion, though there isn't a doubt in my mind that the story will change to be between those two. I'm sure in the future there'll be a more nuanced picture between insular Celtic, continental Celtic, Q Celtic and P Celtic. Okay, we can skip all that. It's not relevant to what I'm going to be talking about. So it is obvious that it is possible. Sorry for the quite literal translation. I'm just trying to save time. So it is obvious that it is possible to spell or imagine or model a common Proto-Celtic pronunciation that is the ancestor pronunciation of the Celtic languages from which all the modern Celtic languages derive. So this spelling or modelling that is different from the reconstructed form of Proto-Celtic. As one will see in a while, my spelling recommendation is often nothing but the Proto-Insular Celtic form with the grammatical ending missing, except when that ending left a trace or a mark on the word preceding it. Now, what is spelling? I intend on including this in my series on Gaelic spelling reform, but sure, look, 'tis all the one, 'tis all related. Everything is related, you see. It is all one. What is spelling? Since I would be referring to spelling, we wouldn't be worse to discuss, or at least for me to talk about, because I won't be listening to you, what spelling is. And what is spelling for? So according to me, what spelling is a model on sound. And it is what it is for is oh yes, and for somebody to express what that person has. Remember, of course, express, thinking etymologically, one can push something out without actually communicating with anyone. So not every expression leads to an impression, if you get me. But this is what spelling for. It's to out one's thoughts through sound. Now, or it's in a visual way, or a visualizable way. As regards pronunciation and spelling, we would do well to remember the difference that I mentioned in my mad ramble about linguistic relativity and moral objectivity, and reflections on the etymology of words. We would do well to remember the difference between what I have coined this term tagorha and tagart, basically the referent, the thing to which, or the thing referred to, and the reference, the thing with which we refer. So, basically, the reference is the noise, the word itself, and the referent is the thing referred to, the whole thing that's pointed at by that word. Oh God, this is going to get very philosophical. Usually, people consider more important the thing to which they are referring rather than the thing with which they are referring. Except when one is referring to the reference itself, basically, what one is referring to. That is, referring to a reference. Since every reference, since every reference can itself be a referent. Stay with me, lads, stay with me. That means that it is more important that one shows. Now, I suppose phonemes would be the simple answer, but I want to dissect this term. Units are bits of meaning sounded, because the keel, the sense, the division of things comes first. The thought comes first. That thought is then given a sound, so keel uamnihe, a sounded thought, and then what spelling is, of course, is that sounded thought written down. So it is more important that when we're trying to express ourselves, that it's the meaning we're trying to get across usually, and not the sounds of the meaning sounded written down, if you get me. I don't, for example, I don't particularly care when I spell something that you pronounce it in your own accent, but what the whole point that I express something is to try and is that you imagine the thing that I want you to imagine. That's why I express something, for example. But the pronunciation that you derive from the word doesn't matter any great deal. As well, linguistically, or as regards cursi kele, matters of intelligence, perhaps, as I would rather call it, or sense, basically, because of course that's what language is really. It's thought, but through sound, and then possibly later written down. So what the sense or the model, the idea that one has in most sense, is the. I'm going to have to read the sentence tonight first. Sorry, I forgot to mention that these notes, although they look reasonably well prepared, there's often a stop mid-sentence. Bit of chaos is good for us. Sorry, there's something there that I couldn't understand. Oh yeah, so basically I can skip this. Basically, the only important time basically that phonetic spelling matters is when I actually want somebody to understand the sounds that I'm making. But usually we're not referring to the sounds that a specific person is making. We're referring to the thing that a person uses those sounds in order to refer to the thing that they want to express. Yes, exactly. So the whole point or the reason of the referent, that is the spelling, is as a model on the referent, that is a thought, and to express that thought, would be to communicate. But again, there's a difference between expressing something for oneself, which might perhaps not impress upon anyone, it might not communicate with anyone, because it is possible to express something without impressing it upon someone else, of course. Now, it is not necessary to say, which is why I'm saying it, that the aim of the referrer, the person referring to something, is the referent, or the antaul, the model, the mental model, the image, the idea, the thought, to express, to put that thought into another person's head. That is the aim of the referrer. The method of referring to something is not. The aim of the referent is not to express the method of the referent. This is getting very rambly. Stay with me. Or it would be more correct to say, so nihe mo tagarha kushin tagarha. So the whole point of the reference is not the method of reference. Or it would be more correct to say the object of the referrer. So it's very hard to translate this sort of thing. Asma hasuf on the cuff. But basically, my whole point is that people don't care. Nivian kospori inanimate objects do not have objectives, obviously. Let one not forget. There's another aborted sentence that I knew I was going to have to abort in my rush to try and get this finished. What am I saying there? Probably doesn't matter. Nothing matters. Now, this is important. So perhaps the biggest difference between the native learner, native, of course, this is where the French word naive comes from, meaning childlike, someone that learns something as a child. That's what a native speaker is usually. So that there is perhaps the biggest difference between the native language learner and the non-native language learner is the order in which those things are learnt. The native speaker learns the context at the same time as that speaker learns the sounds that express that the idea for that concept. So basically, they don't learn they learn the word and the thing that the word is referring to simultaneously. Later, most people, but not all, learn a seeable model on those models, on those mental models, those thoughts, basically, that they learn to spell. Whereas the non-native speaker then, so what I've put here, the non-native speaker approaches language or thought in a way arseways, that is, they come at it backwards, because what most non-native speakers learn first is the visualizable or the visualized referent, that is the spelling. And there is many a non-native language learner who learns the spelling but does not learn what the spelling refers to. And what the spelling refers to, of course, is the native pronunciation. And there, certainly in the case of Irish, I would say the majority of learners and even teachers never learn native pronunciation. And it's even more of a problem that they don't want to. But anyway, well, the ones that are aware that they don't that they have learned this kind of, I don't know, pidgin. So when one is teaching a non-native language to somebody, one should draw one's that learner's attention to, first of all, the referent, that is the sound of the native that the native speakers make, and secondly, the reference or the seeable model, that is the spelling, on the mental model that those sounds express. Sorry, it would be easier to those who can speak Irish just read the notes. You'll know what I mean. I'm trying to avoid in some ways stereotyped thought. Try and get away from stereotyped thought. But anyway, so there are more sounds, phones, than there are now. This term, I would distinguish between phoneme. Phoneme is something psychological, and semiphones are the sounds that people actually take to be meaningful. If I could shove that word semiphone somewhere between phoneme and phone, so sound and a meaningful sound. And this is important what I'm about to say. Everything I say is important. It is not obvious from the scratch on the page, the letter, that is the seeable model of a sound of meaning. Sorry, I want to avoid the stereotyped word. So it's not obvious from the letter on the page, basically, what the sound is. What does that symbol, that scratch, refer to? Are the sounds... so basically what does that model represent? For example, it is no more obvious from the symbols that you can see in the page, if you can see. So it's no more obvious from these symbols than from these symbols that what is being referred to is the sound mochat vyoga. Again, of course it's completely arbitrary. That's the arbitrariness of the sign. So which itself refers to small cats in Irish, right? So it is in the mind, or rather the brain, of the person itself that this intelligence or sense is, and it is not agus ní sarod go gurtar cí alone, and not in the thing in this is difficult to translate, but it's not in the thing that we would put sense into or take sense out of. Basically, it's the sense, meaning is in our mind and not in the word itself. And of course, remember that the word meaning and mind are related etymologically. And this idea of something having meaning or taking meaning out of something, they are of course metaphors, and metaphors themselves, of course, are in the mind. Now, a little bugbear of mine, because I'm a pedant. One often hears from children, or people who work with children, or people who think like children, that letters make sounds. I know it's painfully pedantic to point out that letters don't make sounds, but I want to try and keep as close to reality as possible and avoid metaphor when I can. So obviously, to say that a letter makes a sound is metaphorical speech, and it would be more accurate or nearer the truth to say that a letter stands for a sound or represents a sound. Or that a letter is as a symbol on a sound, as the way it is framed in Irish, or even better perhaps, that a sound is read that a letter is read as a certain sound. No, Jesus, there's still so much to get through. So, since it's necessary, I know this is really boring, but anyway, just so that you get an insight into my mind, do you perhaps wish that you hadn't? Since it is necessary for every person that learns to read the rules and the conventions of that system, to learn the rules and conventions of that system, and since it would be better for that person usually to learn the truth, as regards the history of sound changes or sound replacements, perhaps it would be no worse to make one business of the two businesses that you would learn, so that the reading rules and the I suppose the rules or the history of sound change is the one task, basically, that basically that because the symbol itself on the page doesn't have any meaning in itself, doesn't have a sound, you have to learn what that sound refers to, and because usually one's pronunciation is derived from an older pronunciation, which the spelling might still represent. You might have to learn both at the same time, so that the spelling rules are equal. Sorry, the reading rules are equal to the sound change rules. Sorry, I'm trying to speak to people who know what I'm talking about, and also to non-linguists. But anyway, so for example, in my spelling system, finally we're getting down to brass tacks. TT at the end of a word would be read in the spelling CATT as T in Irish or Gaelic more broadly, but as Th in Welsh. Mar cas cas in Cornish, and as, now depending on dialect, as either as cas or nu ca in Brittonic. That is, the same spelling can be used to refer to many. So I put it this way: the one reference can refer to different referents. Basically, that one spelling can stand for many pronunciations. Yeah. So in this case, the reading rules are the same as the description of the historical facts of pronunciation in those various speech kinds. I hesitate to say language and dialect when I'm being pedantic, which is most of the time. Of course, Tanga, that doesn't need to be pointed out to someone. What is language? Well, maybe it does. Of course, it's a body part, but it's also, normally when we refer to language, what we're actually speaking about is thought outed thought, or thought outing. Whether we do that through speech or whether we do it through gestures, this is what we call sign language, of course. But the word language, lingua in Latin from older lingua, sign language as such isn't language in the sense of the bodily sense of the tongue, but it is exactly the same as it's thought outing through gesture rather than through sound. It's all thought outing. We can skip all this. Now, an important concept. This is my point, I've made it before already, but let one notice that conceptualization can exist in itself without need to express that concept. Make of that what you will. Now, an important concept. Strátna saolacha, or layers of models, basically. So one should understand on the various levels in which meaning can be expressed. Sorry, did I read that sentence? Again, that's perhaps an aborted sentence. That is what speech is. Speech is for expressing one's meaning. There are many people, I would say most people. So usually, sorry, I could have made this much more briefly, but succinctly, but most people, when they come to talk about spelling reform, they think that it should be spelled phonetically. Now, phonetically would give far too many details. you'd be end up writing the International Phonetic Alphabet. Nobody needs that. We don't need that level of detail. What they mean is phonemically writing the sounds that matter, the meaningful sounds that can distinguish the meaning of the words. But actually, sorry, a phoneme, by my understanding, is not a sound, of course. It's something psychological. A semaphone, in my own terminology, is a meaningful sound. But anyway. But often, by trying to make spelling more phonemic, one makes the morphology far more difficult. And this is what a lot of people that I've spoken to about spelling in Irish, they don't really understand this. They just have a kind of a beginner's knowledge of spelling. Anyway, that is that. How would I say? Over loyalty to semaphones or to the phonemes hides underlying patterns. For example, it is simpler, that is closer to 1, to have the ending, the plural ending in English as this symbol here. It's called an S. Even though it refers to 3 different sounds. Well, again, I shouldn't be using phonemes because this is in someone's head. But again, well, I've taken to using this symbol as meaning for semaphone, but I know other people use that for other ends. But anyway, so this symbol here on the page, that let's call it an S, refers to the sounds S, Z, and Z according to certain rules. So, for example, it's to be read as S in cats, as Z in dogs, and as Z, and as Z in horses. In this case, it is easier, or more one-like. The morphology, that is the bits of meaning, basically, is easier, or simpler, closer to 1. That is, there's only 1 letter to represent it. As a single spelling of a plural marker, even though that it is more plentiful and more difficult. That the phonology is more difficult and more plentiful, let's put it that way, as a result. Therefore, it is important to ask which layer or which model should one put the complexity? Should one have complex phonology? Should one have complex morphology? Morphophonology? We do have to put the difficulty somewhere, and that's usually speech kind specific. So just off the top of my head, Finnish is often given as a very easy language to learn because its spelling is very phonemic with an M, not phonetic with a T. But let me tell you from my own personal experience, the Finnish being having such phonemic spelling actually greatly complicates the learning of the morphology, and often hides the fact that there's one single pattern underneath it all. It is all connected. So it is often that one increases the complexity of one aspect when one decreases the complexity in another aspect. Beidir mar hampla, Jesus Christ, when I get to the end of this? Oh God, I don't even find this interesting. So, for example, if one could adhere to spelling completely according to semaphones or phonemes, which would hide perhaps some morphological patterns. That is okay. I won't get into that. I'm sure if you don't know what morphology is, you probably aren't still listening to the video at this stage. But of course, meaningful sounds, phonemes or semaphones, are not the same from place to place or from speaker to speaker. The most or the simplest solution, according to me, is to show the diaphoneme, and this, I wish people would learn what a diaphoneme is. I'm going to make a separate video about this. This is what spelling, or fair spelling, that it includes everyone who presumably would like to be included. Should include, or should, sorry, I can't remember the start of that sentence. Anyway, that is, so what a diaphoneme, dia meaning across. I would actually prefer the term archophone. I'll talk about this in another video. Archa meaning the origin, but anyway, but basically what a diaphoneme is the sound that from which various pronunciations between dialects or speakers derive. But since the root of a sound, or the origin of a sound itself, has an origin, one must decide where does one stop the originating, or the rooting. I mean, of course, people use the word origin, but as far as we know so far, there is only one origin, and that's the Big Bang. But I won't start talking about physics because I know very little about it. But anyway, when people mean the origin, they usually mean the earlier form. I think that's a better way to express it. It's closer to reality. Sorry, I'm thinking about aborting this video because I want to get on to the interesting part, which is actually the spelling itself. I'm almost finished, I think. Yes, brilliant, thank God. Sorry, I don't even find this interesting. But anyway, I'm not stopping now. Therefore, it is not. 'Tisn't a hedge to the sky. It isn't insurmountable. That etymological spelling. Sorry. So etymological spelling, therefore, isn't an insurmountable system, and Gaelic is a good example of that. Sorry, what I mean by that is that etymological spelling that might contain, basically, when somebody pronounces several spellings the one way, so that person has to learn multiple spellings for different words, even though they might pronounce those different words all the same. So, for example, to the person that doesn't have a distinction between BH and MH in Irish, that is a voiced bilabial fricative and a traditionally nasal voiced bilabial fricative, that is every single learner of Irish, it is no more difficult to think where one should spell the BH and where one should spell MH, or the opposite, than it is to remember where one should put a DH and a GH. But as far as I know, nobody thought that it would be easier to run MH and BH together. For example, in Irish spelling, I'm referring to the fact that the Caidiama Figul, this absolute bungled piece of crap that's taught in schools, the spelling, they removed loads of these DHs and GHs because the people that oversaw it really had kind of only a beginner's knowledge of phonology, if even. So nobody recommended, for example, that MH and BH would be run together in Irish except Sean O'Keefe, who composed or who concocted or designed, on Letteru Shimpli, and would make V of both MH and BH in all positions, even at the start of a word, which would hide the fact that, this is referring to my people who know Irish or Scottish or Manx. Well, not Manx, but anyway, this is the problem with Manx. Sorry, I'm running out of time now. I'm going to have to fly. Basically, the whole point is that if you saw a word like this in Irish, you wouldn't know whether that's a mutated form of bo or mo. And arguably, there are still some speakers, and I would recommend that who maintain this distinction between BHO and MHO, and that is actually what I would recommend be taught in schools. But anyway, so running those spellings together would hide from the learner the root, the unmutated root of any word that reader had never seen before, and perhaps many words that the reader had seen before, which would mean that the learning of Irish would be more difficult because of its simplification, if you get me. That's why I use very pedantically the word simple, meaning a reduction or becoming closer to one. Now, according to my own understanding or misunderstanding, the model of least abstraction, or the model, the widest model, is what is closest to the truth. The truth, again, remember reality, the truth, according to my understanding, is the totality of all things. Res in Latin being a thing, real meaning having to do with a thing. Thinginess, that's what reality means, thinginess. Therefore, as regards letters and lettering or spelling, which again, remember, is sense, sounded, written down. Is an tálas má tú bíochta an fór brí. Sorry, an táil slú. Again, that's probably an aborted sentence. So the what am I trying to say there? An fór brí. That the phoneme, or the model of the meaningful sound, is the least abstract. Basically, you've. Oh, sorry. Is the. Oh, sorry. I know what I there. I had another paragraph about what I understand to be abstraction, because of course abstraction, away, tract, I drag. The more we take away from reality, that's what abstraction is. Although it might be worth musing about the fact of whether abstraction is an abstraction, what is left behind, or what is taken away. Anyway, I'm going to skip all that because I'm almost at the end and I still haven't started the part that I actually want to talk about, and I'm going to have to run about 20 minutes. So, and one last point. Sorry, but this is the worst ramble yet. But you're like and subscribe anyway. Could I made a slow? Oh yes, so this is an important question. What is the least amount of abstraction from reality that the spellers of Celtic would accept? In other words, how far from the original spelling, or from again, that's an aborted sentence. Sorry. Well, sorry, another question. What spelling Frastles serves, I suppose, the most amount of people who want to spell in Celtic? Anyway, it would be foolish of us to forget that the Celtic speech kinds, I hesitate to say language or dialect when I'm being pedantic, that these Celtic speech kinds are looking at themselves, or through their phonologies, through the windows of Latin as regards phonemes or semiphones. What sense is there in looking at the phonology of one language, that is the sounds, of one speech kind, that is the sounds of the units of meaning sounded, the phonemes, if you like. What's the point of looking at the phonology of one language looking at the phonology of one language through the phonology of another? That is, we are using the letters of the Latin alphabet basically to spell languages that aren't Latin. I'll go off on another ramble another time about this, but I'm very much in favour of adding letters to the alphabet, because of course the phonology of Latin of ancient Romans isn't at all suited, for example, for many minority languages that are now trying to write or people who are trying to write their language. So, for example, in the Americas, in Australia, for example, it's about time that I think we broadened our repertoire of symbols. Right, I finally got to the end of this awful ramble. Sorry, I want to. Right, I can finally get on to the actual interesting part of the thing that I want to talk about. This is so crap I'd hardly even consider putting it up. But look, I've been talking now, so I'll post it. Right, I'll start the second part now. But it's going to be short because I have to run. Slán.